guys, we've made it through the first couple days of the college basketball season here in 2025-26. I'm Mlodzinski, that's Dan Siegel, that's Ariel Puterman. Before we get going, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to follow us here at CBB Review. That's College Basketball Review at CBB Review here on YouTube. Also on our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. This is College Basketball Review Courtside. We'll be actually recording this every single week, and we'll be delivering it to you each and every Friday. We're going to go over the best around college basketball. We're going to dive deep into the power conferences and some mid-major talk, and then we're going to end with some game picks with a special guest each week. But before we get to that, let's just talk about college hoops. It's back. We are back in the college basketball season. Dan, what have you liked most so far about the new year of college hoops?
I mean, there's a lot. First off, I'm just happy that there's games to watch every night. Monday night obviously came through with the bangers. Then Tuesday a little bit. Wednesday, Thursday was more of those hidden gems. Like, let's look for these little storylines and these low major, mid-majors that we won't necessarily talk about and deep dive into throughout the year. But it's just great to have college basketball back every night. I'm just going to start on that, and before we get to like specific storylines.
Yeah, Ariel, how about you? Like, is there anything else that you want to add to that, just on college basketball being back, just the game itself?
Yeah, I just want to say there's already been so many upsets. I'm not really Power 6 or Power 5 upsets, although there's been some close ones, but we've seen a lot of those high major or high mid-major teams already lose some games, and you've already seen some close finishes as well. So people complain about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday kind of being a little bit quiet, but if you actually sit down and watch, there's plenty of great games and close games and tons of upsets.
Yeah, and I got to give some shout-outs to the American and the Big Ten. The Ivy League technically too, but so far as we record here, it is now into Friday as we speak, and the Big Ten and the American are the only conferences that every team is undefeated. Memphis obviously has not played yet, but every team's undefeated in those conferences. And obviously, if you look at the Ivy League, the same stays true for that, but the Ivy just hasn't started play yet, so a little bit of a different scenario there. We're going to get into our conference picks, but I have to ask you guys first, because it's kind of not tied to that. Was there like an upset? Was there a moment? Was there something in college basketball this week that really, really sticks out to you? Dan, you're nodding your head yes. What do you think sticks out to you in college hoops for the first couple of days, actually?
Yeah, I think we'll get to the banger of a doubleheader in Las Vegas, which unfortunately I was unable to make it to. But I think my biggest takeaway is that we have the deepest crop of freshman superstars that we've had in a long time, right? Every year has kind of had their couple of guys, but this year there's just it's so deep with like high-end talent. I'm not going to begin to pretend I'm an NBA expert, an NBA draft expert, and try to project them at the next level. But for college purposes, for one and done, like they're going to be awesome. Darren Peterson, obviously, he stood out 21 points on 11 shots versus Green Bay. AJ DeBanza, I didn't even think he looked that good, but he had 21 points against Villanova. Like, he has a lot more left in the tank. Cam Boozer was solid. Koa Pete, talk about him. 30 points, 7 assists, or 7 rebounds, 5 assists in that win versus Florida. There, I could keep going down the list. Yesufu for Baylor. There's just so many freshmen, Big 12 especially, that are taking this sport by storm.
Ariel, you got anything to add?
I'll highlight a team, and I don't want to take away from any of you, but I wanted to talk about Oregon quickly. Jackson Shelstad out for this game, probably out to the Players era. They play Hawaii at home, a team that Bart Torvik has second in the Big West. So not a bad team by any means, but a team that they should definitely win by double digits. And for a lot of the second half, they were neck and neck, and Hawaii actually took the lead late before TK Simpkins hit a three, or that he hit a game-winning shot to win the game with about 4 seconds left. But they shot 2 for 16 from three. Simpkins and Biddle were the only scores in double digits. So I'm pretty worried about this team. And if Shelstad's injury is worse than we think, this could be a team that could really plummet. So keep an eye out for Oregon, especially with that injury. And they've got a couple big games coming up in the Players era to monitor.
I got one more to add. The ups and downs that Loyola-Chicago faced in the first couple games. Game 1, Daewoo Tavares hits a buzzer beater. Obviously, that's the first, exhibitions aside, first game that they played since the passing of Sister Jean. So what a moment that Loyola-Chicago has when you can win a game on a buzzer beater. First one there. Everyone knows the storyline there. Everyone knows how much Sister Jean meant to this Loyola-Chicago university, really. Just put the basketball program aside. She meant a ton to just that university. And then you flip, a couple days later to another game, and Loyola-Chicago loses a game to Mercyhurst. So obviously, very cool moment is there. But, basketball-wise, you look at Loyola-Chicago and you're thinking, wow, like, Ariel, I know you tweeted it out. This team now needs to win the Atlantic 10 to make the NCAA tournament. I feel like there's some humor to that, but there's also pretty much 95% truth there. Like that's just a very bad loss.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I'll get to Loyola Chicago later in my mid-major segment. They're one of the handful of teams that stood out to me. The other thing I wanted to talk about was specifically these Vegas games. I mean, to open the season, just two very good games. BYU, Villanova, BYU 71, Villanova 66. In this one, I don't think BYU played that awesome. I talked about Debanza, like 22 points, but he has a lot more in the tank. Villanova did not pass the eye test besides Bryce Lindsey, the JMU transfer off the bench. Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about this Arizona-Florida game. Arizona 93, Florida 87. It's not a situation where Florida is clearly overrated to me. I think Arizona just went out, beat a really good team. Florida got a lot from their front court. Thomas Howe, Micah Hand-Lockton were very productive. They need more from their guard play. I'm not in love with the Boogie Flynn experiment, but I think this was just a really good win for Arizona and Koa P, which we talked about. Now a legitimate player of the year candidate. And I think Arizona will skyrocket in those rankings. Florida should not drop too much.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably get to that a little bit later as well in our conference takeaways. That is college basketball in a nutshell in the first couple of days. We obviously have a lot more to get to and a lot more games as the season has really just begun. But let's get into our conference takeaways. Dan, we will throw it right back to you. Week 1 takeaways. And again, like week 1, but I mean, we're talking right now. This is 12:30 a.m. on Friday, past midnight. There's only been 3 days of college basketball. What have you learned from the ACC in this short amount of time?
Yeah, I think the big game of the week was that Duke-Texas game, Duke 75, Texas 60. Not much to make of this. Like, Duke is just the significantly better team and played as such. Isaiah Evans, 23 points, an encouraging sign. We had the beginning of an era for a handful of new coaches, and it went well for pretty much all of them. Luke Locks for Florida State, Ryan Odom for Virginia, Will Wade for NC State, Jay Lucas for Miami. They all took care of their low major opponents and did so handily. So that is an exciting sign. And then Louisville, I want to talk about them for a couple seconds. Like, they look as advertised. They scored over 100 in both of their games against like super low major, probably sub 300 teams in South Carolina State and Jackson State, but double-digit threes in each game, although not the most efficient. And then overall, like, the ACC is undefeated, pending that Cal result, other than, of course, Boston College losing to Florida Atlantic. I think Florida
Cal won, so that's
what's up.
Cal won that game, so
Cal did end up winning. Okay, so yeah, Boston College the only loss in the ACC. They don't belong in this conference. Florida Atlantic is the better team. That's all I gotta say.
We'll move on to my takeaways, Dan. I love it, though. It's so tough this early, by the way. I mean, like, these teams are playing games against, you play 1 or 2 games. We just can't make enough takeaways from teams. But we'll try our best here. In the Big East, I'm going to start with the Xavier Musketeers. 2-0, but a 4-point win over Marist and a 5-point win over Lemoyne. All right, you look at the Marist game, and you figure Marist had a really good season last year. As Dan, there we go, charging something up. We do everything here on the CBB Review Studio podcast. Xavier obviously played a Marist team that just had a good year last year, and I'm like, okay, that it's okay. You win a game by 4 points. I'm not going to look too much into it. But then you play a game against Lemoyne. Lemoyne is not very good. They're only in D2 for 2 years now, and it's a 5-point game. I'm just looking at a Xavier team, and I'm saying I don't know if we can trust this Xavier team at all. I picked them last in my Big East preseason rankings. I'm standing by that. I don't know if they have a lot going on. Richard Pitino just didn't get a great start in the transfer portal, and I don't think the Musketeers are a team we should take too seriously. Creighton is a team I do want to take seriously, though. Look, it was a closer game than maybe expected with South Dakota, but I think we saw what Greg McDermott can do with a big like Owen Freeman, right? You have Ryan Kalkbrenner for so many years. You're just going to figure it out. It seems to me like a situation of Matt Painter and Purdue, where you can just get a big man every single year. Now, we know Greg McDermott's time at Creighton is coming to a close, but they already have the plan in place for Alan Huss to continue after that. And it seems to me like Creighton has figured out that not only do they want to score the ball and add a wrinkle of some defense in there, I don't think they're as bad as like an Alabama, who we'll also get to later. Creighton likes to play a little bit of defense, but now they're adding this thing of, okay, we also need a really good big man. And you see it with Owen Freeman. He came off the bench in that game. They delivered a really good game, was a big performer for the Blue Jays. Those are my main takeaways. I have other small takeaways as well. Look, St. John's looked really good. UConn struggled for a little bit, but I think they're going to be just fine. They have that championship pedigree. Marquette's 2-0. Like every team besides Villanova won their first game or two if they've played two already. And we talked about it before. Villanova had a really tough game against BYU in their opener. Did they look great? No. But I think Kevin Willard is going to figure it out to be competitive enough in this Big East Conference. So that's my Big East takeaways. Let's move on to the Big 12. Ariel, take it away.
Dan started by mentioning it, but just how good these freshmen are in the Big 12. I mean, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Koa Pete, terrific games. Then you get Chris Sinak from Houston, 10 points, 10 rebounds in his debut. Tunde Yesufu, 24.7 rebounds in his debut. Shauna Bev at Cincinnati, 18 points. And Isaiah Johnson, someone maybe you haven't heard of for Colorado, he had 24 points in his debut and made a couple big shots to give them the win. I think you can really see the gap between the top 8 and the bottom 8 in this conference. I mean, Arizona looked great, obviously. Kansas, Iowa State, Houston, Baylor, Cincinnati, those top 8. But then the bottom 8, they really struggled. TCU, we saw lose to New Orleans. Colorado, I just mentioned, they had to go to the wire against a team significantly worse than them. Kansas State was losing at half, and there's just so many teams like that. Arizona State was probably the best of the crop, which is saying something, and they didn't even cover. So we'll see if that gap shrinks as the season goes on, but so far there's a clear gap between the top 8 and the bottom 8. Last one I wanted to shout out is Christian Anderson. JT Toppin, Luke Bamgoy, and Lawan Watts were all ruled out moments before the game, which was kind of weird, but Christian Anderson played, and he was a guy that a lot of people said this is a guy who's going to break out after a good freshman year last year, and he proved it. 34 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists, and the win. I think he's due for a huge season. I'm excited to see him play with those guys, but even without him, he showed to have no issues, and Texas Tech ran away with the victory. So not a lot to talk about yet, but a lot of big games coming up this weekend to recap.
All right, so those are the ACC, Big East, and Big 12. Lots of great things in those conferences, but we cannot leave out the mid-majors. That is where we go back to Dan with our takeaways from the first couple of days. Look, we got like 80 teams in the Power 5, but we have like 250 teams, more than that, in mid-major. So you got a lot to work with here, buddy.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. The way I decided to go with it this week is I'm just going to shout out 5 teams that stood out to me, and 3 of them in a good way and 2 of them in a bad way. We'll start with good. New Orleans, 78-74 win over TCU. Yep. Matt, you had Coach Stacey Hollowell on the CBB Review Courtside podcast. Great interview. Definitely check that out. I'll link that in the episode description. New Orleans, they've had a rough stretch in the program. They were projected second to last in the Southland Conference in the preseason poll, and they go out and win this game. Just huge for that program. UT Martin, I was live in the building for this one. 86-81 win over UNLV. This was a team that was sub 300 in Ken Palm and Torvik, and I mean, UNLV looked horrendous. A lot of turnovers, just terrible defensive communication. Not a good start for the Josh Pastner era in a pretty empty arena there at Thomas and Mack. But UT Martin, a lot of international guys. Maybe that's the route kind of to being able to recruit at the low major level. And I think I read somewhere that there were 8% or like 8 minutes. I don't know if it was percent or just total minutes, but a very small amount of minutes by American-born players for UT Martin in that win. So maybe that's why the models had trouble projecting them and maybe underrated them a bit. The last team I want to talk about that's good this past week, High Point. Ariel, you're going to be happy with this one. A 97-71 win over Furman. They lost everyone, including their coach, who you just mentioned, Alan Huss. But Flynn Clayman gets promoted, gets a huge win over a really solid Furman program there in game 1. Couple of negatives, Loyola-Chicago. Matt, you already talked about them, so I don't need to get into it too much, but picked to finish towards the top of the Big Ten, barely held on against Cleveland State, then loses to Mercyhurst. They did not look great. And then Boise State, we got to talk about them. Losing to Hawaii Pacific, the head of the selection committee went out and said, despite this not counting officially on the net rankings, that is 100% going to be taken into account in Boise State's at-large tournament resume. And Boise State, I think they were, if not in our top 50, very much near our top 50 in our preseason CBB rank. So they lost to a team in Hawaii Pacific that's located in a tiny little strip mall. Just incredible stuff. Gotta love college basketball, but a tough loss to a D2 school by Boise State.
Yeah, you just look at two teams right there. We talk about Loyola-Chicago needing to win the Atlantic 10 if they want to make the NCAA tournament. Boise State may need to win like a best-of-3 series if they make it to the Mountain West tournament championship game and like sweep that best-of-3. Like if they get to the Mountain West championship and win it, I honestly think the NCAA needs to step in and say you need to win this twice just so we know it's for real, because losing to them, not a great start for us to believe in the Broncos. Dan, thanks for those mid-major takeaways. I'm going to move on to the Big Ten. So many teams here. Again, I'll try to keep it to 3, and I'll try to be quick. UCLA, though. Mick Cronin says he wants to fire himself after a 6-point win against Eastern Washington. Look, Eastern Washington, I said it, they're probably the best 0-2 team in the country. They probably should have beat Loyola Marymount. They probably should have beat UCLA. Can't believe that they started 0-2. Feels like they blew both of those games, but somehow here we are. Look, UCLA, they've just got to figure it out. And I said this about them preseason, that their starting 5 looks great. It's a top 25 starting 5, but their bench looks suspect. And in that game against EWU, the only guy off the bench that played at least 10 minutes or more was Trent Perry, and he played 26. Now, that's kind of playing with the numbers because Brandon Williams played 8 minutes. Steven Jamerson played 9. Excuse me. But you get the point, is that this is not going to be a deep bench, because in game 1 of the season, when you're not playing a lot of bench guys right off the bat, and partially because you're locked in a game like that, I don't know, just doesn't bode well going forward. Oregon, we talked about it, the 1-point win over Hawaii, no Jackson Shelstead. That's going to be a problem. Like, they're just going to need him back. It's as simple as that. Like, Oregon's not going to be a team that we can take seriously at the top of the Big Ten or at the top of the country until they get their point guard back. Once they get him back, I think this Ducks team is fine. Like, they definitely have maybe some issues there, but they've got a 1-2 punch that very few teams can offer, but they need them on the court to be successful. And then Ohio State, 118 points against IU Indy. By the way, IU Indy's had like 2 games where they just put points up, so they're going to be a fun team to watch. I don't think this is necessarily a knock on Ohio State's defense. I think that after seeing, and I'll pull it up real quick, IU Indy put up 90 in a loss against Long Island. This says a lot about IU Indy's defense and their offense. So I don't know if we can really take away a whole lot about Ohio State, because clearly IU Indy just gives up a ton of points. But still, you still got to take advantage of the opportunities you're given. Devin Royal, Christoph Tilley, Bruce Thornton all had over 20 points. John Mobley with 16. We knew it was going to be Royal, Thornton, and Mobley. I didn't know that Christoph Tilley would be this good for this Ohio State team right away, and it's only 1 game. But if he can be another guy added to the mix that are just as important as those others, we said it before, Jake Diebler cannot mess this up. He truly cannot if Christoph Tilley is going to play like that, or even half that good in the Big Ten. The pressure's on Diebler to make it work, because it looks like a very offensively talented Ohio State team. Couple more quick ones. John Blackwell with 31 for Wisconsin in their first game. Seems like he's officially taking over for John Tanji. And Indiana, look, the new era of the DeVries, and it just looks like it's going to be really fun to watch between Tucker and Darian. So that's my Big Ten takeaways. One more conference to get to here, and that is the SEC, Ariel.
Yeah, look, this was the best conference last year, and if week 1 proves anything, it's going to be the best again this year. A lot of other conferences had teams towards the bottom really fight with some mid-majors late into the games, and we didn't really see that this week 1. I mean, I think Mississippi State was really the only team that ended up winning by 20. So that just proves just how deep this conference is. Shout out to Georgia. I wanted to give them a quick nod because UMass played Georgia Tech on opening night and they took them to overtime. Georgia played them a few days later, and they beat them by 65 points. They held them to 29 points in the whole game. So obviously you can't compare to Georgia Tech, but I mean, that's a dominant performance against a team that held their own against a Power 5 team. Texas was the only team with a loss. They lost to Duke, like we talked about. Not a bad loss by any means. And then I want to shout out the Arkansas duo as well, the freshman duo of Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. I've talked about them a lot. They're one of the most fun duos to watch in college basketball. Acuff had 22 in his debut, and Malik Thomas had 21, 6, and 7. So keep an eye out for them all season long. They've got a big game this week against Michigan State. Obviously, a more veteran, experienced team. We'll see how they perform against them. But SEC is looking strong so far, and I expect them to continue that in the near future.
All right, so those are our conference takeaways. Obviously, a lot more that we probably left out because there's just so much to talk about here in college basketball. Again, what are there? 365 teams. There's we could have a podcast for 3 hours if we wanted to. I don't think we really want to. That'd be a long time talking about anything that you love. But that is going to do it for our takeaways. We're going to take a quick break here, and we will be back with our game picks for the week with a special guest. All right, and welcome back to the game picks portion of our segment here on CBB Review Studio, heading to week 2 of the college basketball season. Joining us now is our special guest for these game picks. That is Emilee Smarr, a beat reporter with the Tuscaloosa News for Alabama basketball. Emilee, thanks for joining us today.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
Yeah, 100%. Let's jump right into these games. Already some good ones heading into the following couple days. We will start with Georgetown and Maryland. That is this Friday at 6, and we'll start with Emilee first.
Give me Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree. I've been high on this Georgetown team all preseason. I think they get it done, even on the road.
Yeah, I'm with Ariel here. I don't love what I saw out of Maryland their first time out under Buzz, so Georgetown.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with a 3-1 sweep there as well. I like what Maryland has with Buzz Williams, maybe in the future, but as of today, I got to go with Ed Cooley and Georgetown. How about a matchup between two blue bloods? We've got Kansas and North Carolina, also Friday at 7 on ESPN. Emilee, who you got in this one?
I have a feeling I'm probably going to be against another 3-1 sweep here, but I'm going to go with Kansas.
You definitely will not be, because I'm always going Kansas as well. Darren Peterson's the real deal, and he's going to put on a show in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, not in love with UNC. Not giving them the benefit of the doubt this preseason. Fringe top 25 team. Kansas is much better. They went on the road.
All right, I'm going to go with North Carolina in this one at home early on in the season. I like what Caleb Wilson showed in that exhibition game. I know we cannot take exhibition games too seriously, but I think he's going to be tough for Kansas to handle. Let's move on to a game that we probably don't know much about these teams just yet, but maybe we will later in the season. San Francisco at Penny Hardaway and Memphis. Emilee, who do we have in this game?
I'm still going to go Memphis here. I'm going to ride with the home team.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that this is Memphis's first game of the season, considering we're 5 days in, but I agree with Memphis.
Memphis, yeah, I'm going Memphis as well. I say every time, like, they're not going to drop a game against a quality team like San Francisco. They're going to drop 4 stupid games in American Conference play, but this is a game they'll take care of, I think, by a couple points.
I'm going to be honest. We talked about Memphis earlier a couple weeks ago on our podcast, and I know we were not too high on them, so I'm going with San Francisco in this one.
Right.
I just really do not like this Memphis team. All right, let's move on to another game between power conference teams. We have Arkansas and Michigan State. Emilee, I know you report for Alabama, so are you biased towards Arkansas in this one, or are you going with the Spartans?
I am going to roll with Arkansas. I'm not biased. I'm just going to clarify that. But yeah, I'm going to go with Arkansas here, but it's a very hesitant Arkansas pick. Not incredibly confident about it because obviously you got Izzo and Michigan State, so it's a toss up.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's hard to bet against Izzo at home, but I love those freshmen for Arkansas and Acuff and Malik Thomas. I think they get it done and make a statement.
I'm agreeing with Emilee here. Michigan State, I'll go Michigan State. Yeah, Izzo at home, big time.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michigan State as well. Cohen Carr is just a highlight reel waiting to happen every single game. You feel like you're going to get something from him. So I'll go with the Spartans early in this one. Let's move to a Sunday matchup. While NFL's going on, we're also going to have Indiana and Marquette tipping off at 1.
Marquette
there. Ariel?
Yeah, just a reminder, this one's in Chicago, so neutral court. Both teams will have big fan bases, obviously, a pretty close drive, but I think Marquette, the inexperience of Indiana's team, just with all the new pieces compared to Marquette, who brings back a lot, I think they get it done.
Nah, it's time to get rid of this Indiana stigma. They no longer are coached by Mike Woodson. This is a very well-run athletic department from basketball to football. Give me the Hoosiers. They get their season off started on the right foot.
Dan, I agree with you. Marquette's best returning player was Chase Ross. Shaka Smart, we talk about it, just refuses to get anyone in the transfer portal. Meanwhile, Indiana has Darian DeVries as head coach. Tucker DeVries lighting it up. Just scored his 2,000th career point the other day. I think Indiana wins this one and gets a pretty big win early in the season. How about a Big Ten team? Washington at Baylor out of the Big 12. This is a Sunday night tip-off, by the way.
Baylor's winning in Waco.
I love this Washington team. I have them in my top 25. Hans Steinbeck's the real deal. Give me Washington.
I'll go Baylor as well. Taking them at home. Washington has played well in their, low major opponents so far, I think, but give me Baylor.
Yeah, I like Washington in this one too, Ariel. Hans Steinbeck, I know that Washington struggled against Denver, but he looked like he is the real deal. I know you called that preseason, so I'll give you your props there. I'll go Washington. How about a matchup between two of the best rivals in the sport? That is Kentucky. They're playing this game at the KFC Yum Center at Louisville. This is a Tuesday game at 8 on ESPN. Emily, who do we have in this one?
Louisville has a lot of hype, a lot of unrealized hype coming in, but I'm still going to go Kentucky, I think. I got to roll with the Wildcats here.
This is my pick for best environment of any game this year. It's going to be rocking. I love when both these teams are good. I was not impressed by Kentucky last game, even though they ended up pulling away and winning big, but they really struggled in the first half, and I think Louisville at home gets it done.
Yeah, I mean, Louisville has a ton of shooting. They did not shoot that amazingly in their first two games overall against by opponents. I'm going to go with Kentucky and the Fighting Otega-Oways.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think it's gonna be a great game. Otega-Oweh is such a great player, such a fun player to watch. But look, Pat Kelsey just seems to have this Louisville program rolling. I'm gonna go with the Cardinals at home in this one. All right, just a few more games before our game of the week. But first, we have Texas Tech at Illinois, another Tuesday game. Great games on Tuesday.
My rule of thumb is anybody that's in Nate Oates' non-conference schedule, you probably should pick. So I'm going to go with Illinois here.
Yeah, good pick. I think it depends on who plays for Texas Tech. We saw Toppin, Bamgoy, and Lawan Watts all miss their season openers. So if they're not playing, then I think Illinois wins easily. If they are, I think it'll be close, but I still like Illinois just with their size.
Illini as well. They had 6 guys in double figures in their first game. Everything's clicking. They're little, United Nations of international players, just people from all over the world. I love it. Give me Illinois.
I'm also going with Illinois in this one. I feel like if we played this matchup later in the season when we know what's going on with Texas Tech and how healthy they are, I'll probably go with the Red Raiders. But right now on November 7th, I'm going with Illinois. Let's move on to Creighton and Gonzaga. This should be a fun one. Probably going to be a high-scoring game. Tuesday night at 10 if you're staying up for it.
I know it's Players Era Festival pick that lined this thing up, but I'm still going with the Nate Oates rule of thumb here, Gonzaga.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's going to be such a fun game. Might be first to 100, like you said, Matt. I like Gonzaga as well at home.
I'll go Creighton. I like the way they pick things up in the second half against South Dakota, who's the Coyotes, by the way, not the Coyotes. I learned that for the first time on the broadcast. It's the Coyotes. They got the combination. They got the shooters. They got the front court. Really like their Iowa transfers, Josh Dix, Owen Freeman. I'm going Creighton. Yeah,
Owen Freeman, Graham Ike, two of the better just low post players in college basketball going at it in this one. Here in November, kind of the same thing I said in that Texas Tech Illinois pick. I'm going to go Creighton in this game, but I think later down the line, I do like what Gonzaga may have to offer as we get later down the season. That does it for our rapid fire picks, but we still have our game of the week. That is Alabama and St. John's. Of course, Rick Pitino going against Nate Oates. This is Saturday at noon. Talk about a great college football schedule, but I think this college basketball game beats it all, and this is why we have Emily here with us today. So obviously we're going to preview this game, and we're going to go over everything that people need to know about the Crimson Tide and the Red Storm. Emily, I'm going to defer to you now. For Alabama's sake, let's start with this. Look, no Grant Nelson anymore, no Mark Sears anymore. It's definitely a new team with new leaders. What have you seen out of the program so far this season? And I'm also going to take you full as well.
Awesome. These freshmen have been something to watch. London Jemison and Amari Allen each had 12 points against North Dakota on Monday. And obviously that's not, the most overwhelming opponent that you're going to see on this Alabama schedule. But I think that the way that these freshmen have risen to the occasion, especially considering the circumstances that Alabama found itself in for that season opener, you're down 3 key players. Latrell Wrightsell Jr. out with a finger injury, not his ACL. ACL's A-okay. Aiden Holloway with a wrist injury flare-up, and then Keaton Bristow, one of those key transfers coming in from Tarleton State. He's booted with an ankle injury. I think it was a sprain, I want to say. But the way that these guys stepped up and were able to perform with their back against the wall, they've been something that's really exciting to watch. There's a lot of potential for this front court, but this Alabama team is really just, in the season as a whole, is only going to go as far as their front court takes them, in my opinion. You have Taylor Bowen coming in from Florida State, Noah Williamson transferring from Bucknell, and Noah's shown a lot of really good potential, really good at setting screens, but Nate Oates has said that he wants to see a lot more out of Taylor Bowen. He didn't have an offensive rebound in the last game, only had 2 against Furman. And it's a lot easier for Nate Oates to remember those games where Taylor has none. So it's going to be huge for them to get some offensive rebounds, especially if they're in the Garden against St. John's.
Yeah, and you make a good point there. Obviously, Zuby Ejiofor, one of the top I don't know what position you'd consider him. He's on the Kareem Abdul Award watch list, but I really wouldn't consider him a center. I mean, the guy just moves like a forward for St. John's. Look, last year, St. John's, they showed it on defense. They're going to play physical. They're going to play tough. This year, they brought in some more three-point shooters, so they're going to be more of a threat from deep as well. With that kind of going for St. John's, Emilee, how do you think Alabama is set to defend them? Because we know that Alabama is going to score the ball, but what do they look like defensively against a St. John's team that is going to be physical and they're not going to be afraid to let it fly?
I think that their best defense is going to be their offense in this case, especially with how much Alabama has turned the ball over in these first few games. Obviously, that's not anything that's uncommon for this Crimson Tide team with how fast they play. Turnovers are pretty normal, pretty commonplace, but there's still way too many for Nate Oates, and honestly, way too many, 15 per game so far this season in exhibition play and against North Dakota on Monday. Way too many to get out of St. John's with a win if they were to turn the ball over in the double digits.
All right, we got one more for you as well. Obviously, before we make our picks for this game, St. John's and Alabama. St. John's, a program that used to be very, very good, had a very rough stretch. Rick Pitino has kind of revived them. Alabama, you could sort of say the same thing in a different way, right? Just a real rough stretch for some years. Nate Oates has revived them. What is the hype around this matchup? Because we know that St. John's and Alabama don't really have a big history of playing each other. But from your perspective, down in Alabama country, I mean, how geared up are they? How hyped up are they for going against the Red Storm?
Oh, they're very excited to go against the Johnnies. I cannot say enough about how hyped this entire city is. I mean, like, it might be football season, but Nate Oates has really made basketball a whole beast of its own down here. No room for football-only gumps anymore, as they say. So it's been really exciting down here. Everybody's really excited for them to go to New York. But also I think that everybody's excited to see Nate Oates go against Pitino again because he's 1-1 against him while Pitino was at Iona. So I think that it's really exciting for these two to get back against each other on the court. And I'm sure there's one guy who is from iBob Twitter, as we call it, and he runs a Nate Oates technical counter. So I'm sure that he has that ready for this weekend.
It's going to be a fun one for sure. All right, let's get to our game picks. Emilee, probably know who you're going with, but who do you have in Alabama at St. John's?
I'm still going to go with Alabama. I know that this team could be shorthanded, but these freshmen have so much potential. I know I've already talked about Amari Allen and London Jemison, but Davion Hannah too. I mean, he had one of those dunks that makes you cuss. So it was against North Dakota. So I'm really excited to see what these guys can do. And not only that, but also the freshmen are a little bit harder to scout, right? So I think that if they continue to have the chemistry that they've had so far, I think that it's going to pay off for them really well in the long run. And I also think that, sitting Latrell and Aiden sitting Latrell and Aiden on Monday is really going to have paid off. Nate didn't really sound incredibly optimistic that these guys were going to be back for Saturday, but at the same time, I think that it was a precaution so that way he could at least play them with some limited minutes whenever the going gets rough. So give me the Tide.
Ariel?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. Both teams top 20 in tempo. Expect this game to probably be in the 80s, even 90s. Phylon's going to be the key in this game. He could score 25 easily. I think he's going to dominate those St. John's guards. My question is Alabama's forwards. How are they going to defend against Dylan Mitchell, Bryce Hopkins, and Zuby Ejiofor? We haven't really seen it. And like you mentioned, they're young in that department. And that's my biggest concern. Because of that, like I said, it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to lean the Johnnies here.
I'm going to go St. John's as well. I think when it comes down to it, it's who I'm more comfortable making a stop and a big one. And I think St. John's is just a much better profile defensive team. They have a lot of versatility. That's Rick Pitino's calling card. So I think when it comes down to it, it'll be a close game, a super entertaining NBA style game that St. John's is able to win in like the situational crunch time moments.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with St. John's here. So it is going to be 3-1 in favor of St. John's. Look,
I'm used to it now.
Nah, but I do think it's going to be a good game. In seeing what St. John's did against Quinnipiac, and you don't want to take a lot of stock in that, but Quinnipiac was a great team last season. They brought back their leading scorer. They held him to 10 points in that first game. They scored the ball like crazy. And again, that 3-point shooting that they added that they did not have last season, to me, that just brings St. John's to a whole new level. But yeah, this is going to be a fun one on Saturday afternoon. Emilee, again, thanks for joining us here on College Basketball Review Studio. Thanks, everyone, for listening, for watching. Make sure to tune in next time. I'm Mlodzinski. That's Ariel Puterman. That's Dan Siegel. And we will talk to you next week.